But I think people can choose to be not ordinary. You know, they can choose to not necessarily conform to the conventions that were taught to them by their parents. So yes, I think it's possible for ordinary people to choose to be extraordinary. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't really have any grand designs. I mean, the reason I started programming computers was because I like computer games. And I play lots of computer games, and I learned that if I wrote software and sold it, then I could get more money and buy better computers. So it wasn't really, you know, with some grand vision or anything. When I was growing up, I'd read lots of books, and they were very often set in the United States, and it seemed like a lot of new technology was being developed in the United States. So I thought, okay, I really want to work on new technology, so I want to get to Silicon Valley. You know, which when I was growing up, Silicon Valley seemed like some sort of mythical place, you know, like Mount Olympus or something.
So when you thought about the Silicon Valley, you were still in South Africa, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you were still in your teenager time.
Yeah. I tried at first to convince my parents to move to the U.S., but neither of them would move. They were divorced, and so eventually I was able to get my Canadian citizenship because my mom had been born in Canada. So I moved first to Canada by myself when I was 17, and then a few years later I moved to the US. The reason I came out to Stanford was actually to work on energy storage technologies for electric cars. That summer of '95, I was looking at the internet, and it seemed to me like the internet was going to have a big effect on humanity. So I thought, well, I can either work on electric vehicle technology and do my PhD at Stanford and watch the internet get built, or I could put my studies on hold and try to be part of the internet. And at first I tried to get a job at Netscape because that was the only internet company, and they didn't respond to me. So then I was like, okay, if I can't get a job at the only internet company, then I better try starting something. But I talked to my professor and I said, look, I'm going to try starting a company. It's probably not going to succeed, and if it doesn't succeed, can I come back? And he said, sure, no problem. And so I put my studies on hold and started the company. I was born in Pretoria, South Africa. Lived in Johannesburg and Durban as well. Was able to travel to a few countries growing up within Africa and around the world. Went to the US when I was, I don't know, 10-ish or something like that. And I read a lot of comics. No, I wouldn't say that I always knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I actually wasn't sure what I wanted to do growing up. And I think at one point I thought, well, like inventing stuff or creating things would be a cool thing to do. But I wasn't really sure if that meant starting a company or whether that meant working for a company that made cool stuff. In fact, when I first came out to Silicon Valley, it was to do grad studies at Stanford in applied physics and material science. And then I saw, this was in '95, I kind of thought the internet would be something that would change the world in a major way. And I wanted to be part of it. And actually what I first tried to do was I tried to get a job at Netscape. So I wouldn't actually try to start a company, I tried to get a job at Netscape. And then...
that didn't work out?
No, I didn't get any reply. So I mean, I had a physics and economics degree, or physics and business degree from Wharton, and I was doing grad studies in applied physics and material science, and I guess that, you know, I didn't have a computer science degree or several years working at a software company. So for whatever reason, I didn't get a reply from Netscape, and I actually tried hanging out in the lobby, but I was too shy to talk to anyone, so I was just like standing in the lobby, and then I
just walked in. Did you have your resume with you, or was it?
Yeah, actually, it was pretty embarrassing. I was just sort of standing there, trying to see if there's someone I could talk to, and then I just couldn't. I was too scared to talk to anyone, so then I left.
Amazing. So then you went on to do what from that point?
So then I was just writing software that summer, and it got to the start of the quarter for Stanford, and I had to make a decision, so I decided to go on deferment. So I figure if I start a company and it doesn't work, then I can always go back to grad school.
Sure.
It's just, you know, so I talked to the chairman of the department, and he let me go on deferment. And I said I'd probably be back in 6 months, and he said he's probably never going to hear from me again, and he was correct. I've never spoken to him since. So started a company with my brother and a friend of mine, Greg Curry, and the three of us created Zip2, which where the initial idea was to create software that could help bring the media companies online. So we helped, in a small way, bring companies like like New York Times, Hearst, Knight Ridder, and so forth, bring them online. Because they weren't actually always online. People don't realize that.
Were you the CEO at the time, or did you give that role to someone else?
Yeah, I started off being the CEO. So I was CEO for probably the first year, and then. But after we got VC funding, the venture capitalists wanted to hire a professional CEO.
Was that frustrating, or were you like, this is over my head, I'm ready to give up this role to someone else?
At the time, I thought it was a good idea because I didn't really know what I was doing, and I figured they would hire someone who would be really good, and that person would increase the chances of success of the company, and so that seemed like a good thing, and then I could work on software and kind of product direction, and that's what I like doing. So that seemed like a great thing. Now, in retrospect, I think that wasn't the best thing because the person that was hired, in my opinion, was actually not that great. So I think, I think quite frankly, the company succeeded in spite of that person, not because of him.
Starting a company for the first time is very challenging for a lot of people. They don't even know where to begin. You must have run into a lot of, we all made mistakes in starting our first company as far as hiring. Like you said, the people you bring in, like the CEO that replaced you. Did you surround yourself with mentors? Who did you look to for advice?
I read a lot of books and talked to lots of people. I didn't have any one person who was a mentor, but I always look for feedback from people around me and feedback from an historical context, which is books basically. So that's
any books stand out as something that was like something that you really relied upon, or are they just general business books, or?
I didn't read actually very many general business books, but I liked biographies and autobiographies. I think those are pretty helpful. So I like, and actually some of them aren't really business, although like something like Franklin's, both his autobiography and say the biography that's recently been written by well, not that recently, but in, I guess 5 or 10 years ago, whenever it was written, the biography by Isaacson on Franklin is really good. You can sort of see how he kind of, because he was an entrepreneur. He sort of started from nothing, actually just like a runaway kid basically, and created his printing business, and just sort of how he went about doing that, and then over time he also did science and politics. So that, I would say certainly he's one of the people I most admire. Like Franklin's pretty awesome, but then I think it's also worth reading books on scientists and engineers. Tesla, obviously.
Did you hear about that Tesla museum that they're having built?
Yeah, I actually contributed some funding to save the land.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That was a very cool thing that Oatmeal did.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty cool. I like the way that they put it too. It's like, let's have a goddamn Tesla museum.
Yeah. That's awesome. So fast forward a little bit, you obviously did PayPal. That was very successful. And then at some point in time, you're like, I'm going to do something crazy, something that's never been done before, with Tesla and the space-related stuff that you're into.
Yeah.
I mean, why take on such huge, very ambitious type projects? I mean, did you ever have a feeling like this might not work?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, so this kind of goes back to college, where I was trying to figure out what are the things that would most affect the future of humanity, and the things that I thought would most affect the future would be with the internet, sustainable energy, which is both production and consumption, and so effectively solar cities like production, Tesla's consumption in a sustainable way, and then also space exploration and specifically making life multiplanetary. Now, I didn't expect at the time to be involved in all of those areas, but those are just the areas that I thought would most affect the future, and as it turned out, I've been fortunate enough to be involved in those areas. But that's the thread that connects them. It's like
is kind of my best guess at what would most likely affect the future in the biggest way.